Firstly, stop treating yourself
Yeah.
and your business like an MBA project. Okay? It's not. Get real.
Yeah.
How did I get my vision?
Yeah.
I wanted to be on Wall Street. Now I'm working for the man on the woman on the street.
Yeah.
Why? Because I had a car accident. I wrapped myself around a tree to help somebody what? Pay less tax, move money overseas, legally, might not be ethical.
Yeah.
I'm trying to live with yourself. So you got to find your own purpose first. And that was the first thing. First, be true to yourself. What's your purpose? How do you want to be remembered? And I don't mean that in an egotistical but in a way, how do you want to be remembered, the people you care about, the things that you care about? How are you going to leave this dent? That's the first point.
What does it take to scale to 7 figures and beyond and grow with purpose? Tune in for stories, strategies, and tactics from founders and business leaders who've been there and done that.
Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Business Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to be sitting here with my friend, David. I've never told you this, David, but you're one of those people that I look up to as a great example of what it takes to be disciplined, focused, and long-term thinking. I mean, you've been running the same business for more than 30 years. So David is the CEO and founder of Health and Life, a business that helps client in the medical space. Maybe I might just get you to say a little bit about what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're basically traditionally a chartered accounting firm.
Yeah.
We operate nationally.
Yeah.
Been doing it since 1992. And, one of our key focuses is health and financial literacy. And particularly though, what we've learned is, even though I come from a medical and healthcare family background, is that financial literacy on how to set up and run a practice efficiently and effectively so it's sustainable in the community, so patients can afford you, and you can also, tick all those boxes, that there was a gaping market. And so what we've really been focused on is trying to create sustainable and socially responsible practices and environments for our clients to thrive in, so they can recruit and retain high quality staff and provide high quality services to the broader community. So I guess that's been the key mission. I see myself actually as a patient advocate.
Yes.
And as much as a provider advocate, because I just know, particularly as you're aware with my backstory, I had a bit of a car accident.
Yes.
9 operations later, I realised just having all the money in the world and being 6 foot under doesn't kind of make sense.
It doesn't.
And we just wanted to take a more pragmatic and common sense way of saying, you've got to make money, you've got to do well, you've got to make bank, but to do it ethically and responsibly is the only way you can have not only a sustainable business or practice, but a sustainable community where the expectations are a lot more measured and considered, not just about you, but it's a we environment, not a me environment. So that's basically what created the birth of Health and Life. Some people say, what do you do? Well, I specialise in death and taxes. So I guess that's recession proof.
Yes.
But that's basically what we do. So we do more than just traditional tax returns. We are really interested, and we embrace that there is a big, not only national or local objective, but there's a big community objective to improve healthcare standards around the world and globally.
Awesome. Now, I want to take you back to the early days when you were in school and going through university. Was starting a business on the cards, or was it something that you stumbled on? How did you get it? How did you get into the entrepreneurial journey?
That's a really good question. It's actually an excellent question. I haven't really said this publicly at all, so this is the first. Look, I had a bit of an unusual start. My school journey was a bit unfortunate that, I was promoted from grade 1 to grade 3, and I didn't think I was that smart at school. But I became the smallest kid in the class and got a lot of bullying up to grade 5. So I was probably more worried about running away from the kids than on focusing on my textbook. So I started failing a lot at school. So my grades were going down, the bullying was going up, and my teachers were fantastic. They said to me, I'm too thick and I'm never going to achieve anything in life. And my parents, rightly or wrongly, maybe shared a view, and I've said, I was going to become a garbage cleaner. So I guess that was my upbringing. And that was and I thought that was normal, I guess. And then one day, I was wondering, what am I going to do? And And I got a job at a place called Magic Mountain, which is now called the Beach House.
Oh, cool.
Here in Adelaide. So for the Adelaide people, you know what it is. It was quite an iconic amusement destination. And I got a job at Sky Cycles, and I got paid the magic sum of around about $2.50 an hour. So I'm making coin at the age of 12. I'm making bank, and I'm feeling pretty rich. Worked some pretty long hours. And I came home, and we lived in a suburb. It was kind of, I think people might know, it's called Burnside. It was a little bit more of the affluent. My father was a doctor.
Yeah.
And I came home and I said, Dad, after 1 week and getting my payslip, I was pretty excited. Yeah. And I said, Dad, I am ready to buy this house. That's my aspiration. So I go in there and I say, and he goes, well, can you afford it? And I said, yes, here's my payslip. We're good to go. And he looked at me, and then he opened up his briefcase and he showed me the local council rates. And I went into a personal financial crisis at the age of 12, and I thought, I cannot afford this. There were so many zeros next to my pay packet. Yeah. And it was at that point, I had that one moment, I thought to myself, I'm in trouble. I'm not good academically, because I asked him what he did, and he says, I'm a doctor, and I didn't like blood. And so the next thing I said to myself, I've got to find something else to do. I wasn't getting much career advice. And then one day, I went to a little Catholic school called St. Ignatius, which is a lovely school. And it was tennis. It was actually a Saturday morning, and one of the kids at school was there. But anyway, we kind of drove up, and this guy turned up in this big black Mercedes Benz, the latest, with a big mobile phone. Now this is around, I think, about 82. I'm trying to get my years right. Yeah. I thought, oh my God, who is this guy? Yeah. He's doing well. Yeah. So as a kid, and this is the time when I got this job at Magic Mountain, I went up to him. And I said to him, hey, how did you, sir, can I ask you a question? And I think for a 12-year-old to go and ask somebody, who you are and what do you do for a living.
That's pretty courageous.
I went up there and did it because I was totally desperate at this point at the age of 12. And he said, I'm a chartered accountant. And I went, whoa, what's that? Yeah. And he goes, well, I basically do people's books and we see how people make money, and I give them advice. And that's what I do. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. And I said to him, well, what subjects do you do? He goes, well, do English, do economics, do commerce. And I hang on, I said, I'm doing commerce. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, all the dumb kids do commerce who don't do Latin. Because most kids who do Latin do medicine, and the dumb kids did commerce. So I was in the dumb kid class. I'm going, oh my God, is this the place where I'm going to find my future? Yeah. Okay? And so we went down that path. He says, and don't worry about all the other subjects. Don't worry about physics and all those things if you don't like them. And just make sure you get to uni. And that's exactly what had happened. Yeah. Little did I know that, and this is a bit of a tribute and a thanks to him. His name was John McDonald. Okay. He actually turned out to be the chairman of McMahon's Holdings, which is listed on the stock exchange. And he owned Magic Mountain. And he also owned ski fields in Victoria. He was a big listed construction company. So what came out of this is that one moment, and that's why we have a thing called the One Moment Foundation. It only took literally a 5-minute conversation with somebody that I could look up to. And when you ask me about my entrepreneurial spirit, that's where it pretty much probably was crystallized with that one conversation. And I thought I'd study accountancy because I see accountancy is life expressed in numbers. I wanted to learn about people and business, and the best way to do was to become a chartered accountant. Yeah. And I went off to the big 4 accounting firms, and the rest is history. But that's where it really started for me.
Yeah. Going back to the early days of starting the business, what were some of the toughest challenges you faced, and what is your approach to tackling those challenges?
I love that question.
Where do you start?
Well, there was something a bit unique in Adelaide at the time because I was kind of always a very socially orientated person. I do a lot of community service. I actually got a lot of community service awards, even from the High Commissioner of the Indian Community. I was the Treasurer of the Indian Association. And here in South Australia, the migration rules were pretty much, most of the Indians here were all doctors. Yeah. And so when I set up Health and Life, I thought, this is going to be easy. Yeah. They will know me. Yeah. I should get plenty of business. And all of them were kind of, look, to be quite honest, a lot of people weren't sure, why are you going to get into this practice management? Why don't you stick to being an accountant, stick to that, doing the books kind of stuff? And I said, no, I actually want to do something where I can really make a difference type stuff. And some were supportive, but let's be honest, 99% never crystallised into business at all. No, actually, that's wrong. 100% never crystallised into business at all. So when I thought I had this really big captured market and they loved me and trusted me, I didn't get any business. Why? Well, they all knew me personally and they didn't want to share their financial affairs, which I didn't realise was quite intimate. It is. People are probably more protective of their financial affairs than anything else in their life than their own medical records. Yeah. And the other element to that was it was too close. And doing business with family and friends, it's kind of uncomfortable. So I made a big misstep on that. The second big misstep I made was I called the business Australian Clinical Practice Managers, which was the biggest marketing stuff up, because basically practice managers thought David was going to replace them, which is what my intention. And so every door got closed on me because they thought I was an outsourcing company. So the reality is I didn't do my market research well in terms of what I called my business and what people first thought. And the networks that I thought I had overestimated that they would actually bring any true value. Some were helping, I did a lot of free work for them at the time. And one of them at least introduced me to a bigger clinic, and I got my break, but it was actually with an Australian clinic, and it happened to be a very high profile one at the time. And that's where it went boom. Yeah. So we often make a mistake that we just assume we know the right things. Yeah. But market testing and getting people who can give you really honest feedback is very hard, because nobody wants to break and crush your dreams. And none of us are not ready for the brutal truth. Yes. And until you actually are in a position where you can accept that, will you go forward and don't be upset if somebody gives you something negative? And look, still, I remember when I went and joined public practice in my accounting profession, people said, you're crazy just to specialise in medicos. And there was 11 people in the room that said, don't do it. And I'm still doing it to this day. Yeah. So there will be naysayers, but if you're clear on your vision, you know why you're doing what you're doing, it becomes a lot easier to get over those barriers.
A lot of businesses, mindset is a big component in growing a business. What are some of the beliefs you had then? What are some of the beliefs you had to let go in order to grow your business, in terms of, like, what are some of the biggest mindset shifts you had to make to get your business to a point of growth?
Look, to be quite honest, I'm a pretty hard taskmaster on myself. Yeah. My background was a little bit different to when I first got into my business. I came from a big 4 firm where the bank had collapsed, and there was a Royal Commission, and I knew people who were on the boards. I knew people who family members, people who had committed suicide, and also a lot of families that went bankrupt in South Australia. And ethics became my biggest problem. I had a big ethical dilemma in the profession and how it worked and the justice system. And so when I set up, I wanted to be an ethical firm. I'm not saying they were unethical then, it's just obviously the lessons learnt, but I still think we're learning them, because that was actually the precursor to the GFC. And what I learned was, just simply ticking and flicking and having glossy letterheads and people that look beautiful wasn't doing your job. You had a duty of care to the community. So I guess my point of difference, and it sounds stupid, is to be ethical. Okay, and that was very hard for me, because I didn't want to replicate what had happened in the past into that being my future, because I wanted to eat well and sleep well, and so do I want my clients to be the same. And so to take an ethical position, you don't make a lot of money fast. Because you've got to do things properly. Most people, just to get ahead, they'll do it, and I never wanted to cheat. So I guess my position, how did I actually get ahead? I thought I'd go to the media and create a presence, talk about contemporary issues in my industry, managed care, and how it affects patients, and try and get a connection that way. And I did go off to the US and study and learn what was going on there. So I guess there was no shortcut, and too many people do it. And the real problem is that when you do it, it does come back to haunt you, not in 2 or 3 years, it could be even 10 years. And I would honestly say, look, I came from a different mindset, that you did it properly, you just didn't do it at all. And nobody makes an intentional mistake or want to intentionally harm people, which is what my headspace was. But the reality is, it was hard to make bank. I had to borrow money from family, friends and fools, whatever you want to call it at the time, just to kind of get ahead. And also told, look, why don't you do something else because it's not working. But look, the reality is you need to get ahead. I ended up making sure I did provide, not just being a consulting firm, became a tax and accounting practice, and that basically was the flip, which gave me that ongoing continuity because clients wanted it, and I ended up just doing what the clients wanted, not just what I wanted to do, which made the point of difference moving forward at the time.
That's good. How do you stay focused during those times? Like, how do you stay focused and motivated during all those setbacks?
It's the motto, the mission of Health and Life is to create a sustainable and socially responsible healthcare system. And that wasn't limited to Adelaide, that was globally. And I think for me, to this day, I'm never finished. And it's a global objective. And until I see that we're making a global impact, that's what keeps me motivated because I know it's going to do good. And I think that's one part. But that's also because I do care about people a lot, and I do care about the community, even though some people don't, and that's okay. That's their choice. But I see myself as a humanitarian first, and a business person third, and a professional person second. So that duty of care is really important. Saying, but this is the right thing to do it the right way, and to be a leader, even though I might be leading only 2 people, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable not having 20,000 clients. I'm happy to have only 2 quality clients who share a similar vision. So part of it is basically being clear in your vision and sharing with like-minded people, and they'll stick around, and they're very, very loyal. But every time you compromise, what you do find, it's harder to cope, and you don't. And when you stop believing in yourself, this becomes your biggest nightmare. You become your biggest enemy. So having a clear vision, sticking to your principles, just trying to improve and doing things better, smarter, quicker, understanding that you're not trying to take advantage of people, that you got to leave something on the table for both sides, having that triple win there for the community, yourself, and the client, that when those setbacks happen, you go, look, I wasn't a mean person, didn't try to do the wrong thing. I've now learned from it, and the key is to learn from it and capture it, leverage it, and make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's how I kind of get through it. It's very expensive when you make a mistake in business. You can't undo it. You can't unsay things. The best you can do is learn from them. And if I'm learning, I'm feeling good. If I don't learn, I get pretty upset with myself. And sharing that with your staff and sharing that with your clients, saying, okay, we didn't quite get this right, but this is what we're going to do to fix it. I think these are really, really important because at the end of the day, the mindset has to be, you have to be of good conscience, particularly if you're in healthcare, and you have to be kind to people, and you have to be grateful that people might not be able to afford to pay you for whatever reason, and you understand that, and there's that fine balance you got to keep. But the bottom line is, if you're doing it for the greater good, for me, then I don't mind making the mistake, because that's one of those lessons I've got to learn, that I've got to understand and write it down and make sure I can share that, like today, so then we can all move forward and not keep looking back and always having basically a shopping list of regrets. That doesn't help anyone.
That doesn't. And I think one thing I've always admired about you is you're very vision driven, you're very mission driven. People are not very vision and mission driven. Is there something that came to you? How did you go about developing your own mission and vision, and how would you recommend to someone who is starting a business or maybe growing a business, and because if you don't have a mission and vision, at some point you sort of end up going everywhere. Is there a process you go through? Is there a way you'd recommend for someone to set a mission and vision for themselves and their business?
Well, firstly, stop treating yourself and your business like an MBA project. Okay? It's not. Get real. How did I get my vision? I wanted to be on Wall Street. Now I'm working for the man and the woman on the street. Why? Because I had a car accident. I wrapped myself around a tree to help somebody pay less tax, move money overseas, legally, might not be ethical. I'm trying to live with yourself. So you got to find your own purpose first. And that was the first thing. First, be true to yourself. What's your purpose? How do you want to be remembered? I don't mean that in an egotistical But in a way, how do you want to be remembered? The people you care about, and the things that you care about. How are you going to leave this dent? That's the first point. And that's what happened when I had the car accident. And sadly, because I had the car accident, there's no way but to look up. I had lost everything around me.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look good that you've had a car accident on the job. It's not like everybody's offering you a job. It was in the middle of the recession. There was only one way, and that was up. So you've got to basically, and that's probably sometimes when a lot of people start their businesses, when they can't get a job, can't keep a job, and who realise that they're different to everyone else. They can't just fit into the normal 9 to 5 day routine. And it's great to actually hit rock bottom, because you know what, you've got a blank canvas and you can do what you want, and that's the first step. The second step for me was realising, obviously, the car accident and meeting so many doctors and great healthcare people, that health is really important to me now, and I didn't realise that as much. And the real reason why people make a mistake, they're very transactionally driven. They're not relationship driven. They're not trying to relate to the community. They're not trying to relate to, the greater good. And what happens is that they're just trying to make a quick buck out of somebody, and that never lasts, and it comes back to catch you. And we get caught up with too much social media, flashy car, trophy house, trophy spouse. So we make a lot of wrong decisions. And, you know, you can make a lot of money, but I've seen people make a lot of money and then buy the car that they can't afford, and then they lose their business. They end up having to pay for things they can't afford. And it's because their metrics and what they measure, which tends to be more material and less soulful and less self-reflective of who they are, they haven't understood their own purpose. They're just trying to impress people that they don't like, getting into debt and buying things that they don't like. And all I could say to people is step back and look at yourself and say, well, what do you like? Who do you want around? Hang around with people you like to aspire to, and don't hang around those people that you don't. Because, you know, you don't all have to be rich. You don't all have to have multiple qualifications. You don't all have to be good looking. You choose what you want to be, and understand you're making that choice, and it's an active choice. And once you do that, you're in control. Then you start making the right decisions. And then when you make a mistake, you don't care, because you're actually now quite clear why you're doing what you're doing. And that's probably the biggest mistake people make. And I would say work on relationships, don't work on, treat people as people, and work on their relationships, and don't treat people like transactions. Because making money is not why you do what you do, it's a result of what you do.
It's a result, So you've been in the same industry, you've been in the same business, in the same niche for more than 30 years. Have you thought of broadening out and broadening your customers, or what have you find as the pros and cons of being really focused on one niche versus I'm an accountant, I'm a chartered accountant, we can do sorts of different things? What's been some of the pros and cons?
Well,
have you ever been tempted to have you been tempted to do it, or have you always been very focused? Sorry.
You're right. I've never really been tempted to diversify outside the industry specific area. And simply because I would see a lot of accountants do that, and they become a jack of all trades and a master of none. And then all they're doing is basically, I don't know, entering numbers into spreadsheets, and really they don't have a contextual or deep understanding of what they're doing, so they can't bring any true value. We do benchmarking. Why? Because we just focus on one industry. We kept a longitudinal benchmark for 33 years, so we know the financial anatomy of our clients, and I can pick that up in a second. But if I'm doing farmers one day, I'm doing digital website companies the next, there's only so many hours in the day you can keep track of it. And all those industries have very, very unique and specific factors that make them tick. So what I realise, and that's probably where I'm very different to a lot of other industry, a lot of the accounting firms, is they all say, we do medical, but it's part-time because they're also doing all these others. And they've just got some marketing function, and they're probably making their money out of the financial planning or the insurance they sell, which is a side hustle, which ethically I have issues with. And they're not remaining true to their core constituents. So I'm about really understanding them. I've become an ACPAL surveyor, which basically means I can go and accredit. For 10 years I used to accredit practices and could do a Bowie-Dick test on a steriliser as much as sign their tax return. Nobody in Australia was in that sort of position. That's how much I was committed to my sector. And that's why you become quite different, because you become a vertical expert in their industry, which is what they're looking for. And you can see things with a much richer and deeper horizontal, vertical view that, or 360 review that no other can see. I call it a 4D view. And that's why I become less myopic, and that's why I can see bigger problems, because I can have a better top-down view and bottom-up. And therefore, when people see me, they say, well, David, you know, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, it says, oh, you're strategic.
Yeah.
But then you also understand the granular detail right down to the taxman, saying, you know, that GST is not quite right for that medical consumable. But that's what you get from being what's called a subject expert and specialist. And that's where the world's moving. I just don't think you can spread yourself that thin in any industry you're in. You've got to pick your industry and really work that niche. Because people will soon work out that, you know, you know, they're going to end up moving on. And I think that's the thing. They'll know you're not authentic, and they know you don't really specialise. Yeah. So that's why I picked this. Well, I picked this sector because of the accident, but that's why I've continued to focus on it.
That's awesome. So what I've noticed over time is your product and services have evolved. What's been your approach to creating products, to product development, and coming up with products that your market really, really wants? Because you've evolved your offering over a period of time. You started off with chartered accounting, now pretty much, yeah. Okay, well, a lot of exciting things in the horizons, I'm sure.
Yes.
That we'll talk about in future when you're ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Look, I started off as a consulting firm wanting to help doctors.
Yeah.
Right? The reality is I was competing against accounting firms that, he's an accountant, so then I'd get kicked off the job.
Yeah.
So then I had to become an accounting firm in order to do the consulting work, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the add-on, the accounting firm. I wanted to be the consultant, you know, the go-to advisor was really what I wanted to do. But my client said, no, you got to do both. You can't do one without the other. So we started doing the accounting firm, and when I started doing that, they had this big, serious legal obligations. And we knew that a lot of doctors weren't getting paid properly, and a lot of practices weren't getting it right, and everybody was assuming software systems worked. So we ended up building a program called the Doctor's Pay Calculator, which is a tax compliance tool. And suddenly we were doing software now. Okay?
Yeah.
So next we were doing software because it made it easier for you know, these organisations to pay the doctors and make sure their tax returns were right on both ends, so it wouldn't get an audit. And we thought that was fine. But then our service offering had to change again because the industry had some upsets, so we started doing things that they wanted. You know, we've noticed there was another niche that nobody looked at, and we were doing a lot of what are called pathology market rentals. So we started doing a pathology bidding, and so we would set up sites and we'd help greenfield sites, and we'd basically not only negotiate the doctors and their rents, we'd also do that for the pathology, radiology, pharmacy. So we became even broader because people wanted it, because you knew it. And also we were doing doctors from overseas, so we knew the immigration laws. And I started to work with lawyers. And so then we started building templates that were prepared by lawyers, and we co-produced them. So, and they created new revenue streams because it was quick, it was easy. You know, if you needed to get something set up, you didn't have to have an army of lawyers that took an accountant that would take 6 months to do something. We could just literally do it within, you know, a day and a much cheaper and a more effective price point. So what happened is we became what was called an intellectual property practice. And I joke, you know, we used to work for a couple of companies that people might know, AstraZeneca and Pfizer's. And I got a gig because I was doing presentations on GST when it first came in 2000. And there used to be a bit of a running joke. It was called Make It, Keep It, Hide It. How to make money in healthcare, how to keep it from the tax office, and then how to hide it from people who sue you. So I'd be doing presentations as well, and I used to earn money from doing presentations and then writing columns. So what I hadn't realised that in my first 10 years, I'd learned so much IP and had built so much stuff, and a lot of it I didn't get paid for, but people actually valued it. And people wanted to hear those insights, those granular insights, and then how to really put it together. And so over a period of time, we started building software, we started building, you know, templates and stuff like that, so then people could have more of a turnkey solution. And so they could move fast and quick and with speed. And what we realised with doctors is they don't like signing things, but when they do, they're more stickier, and people love things in writing. And, you know, so we worked with the law firms and basically build contracts and stuff that looked at fair work rules, ATO rules, contract rules, and then we went to the tax office and we've told the tax offices what we're doing, and then the tax office is now considering our work and saying that these should be national benchmarks. So the whole idea about us is we weren't trying to produce things because we've got nothing else better to do.
Yeah.
We were trying to fill a need that wasn't being filled.
Yeah.
And so it's a natural evolution. And so, yes, and now we have a national software company as well with what we do, which complements our existing services. So now we do consulting, we do tax and accounting, and now we provide a software solution.
Yeah.
So it's an evolution. It's not something because you're going to make a buck. It's more because you're trying to fill a need is why we do it.
Yeah. So you're constantly listening to what you're marketing, and because you're very vertically integrated, you're able to sort of tell what they need and provide the next thing they need.
Yeah, we don't want to do what the local accountant does.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
We want to do what they don't do.
Yes.
We want to give our clients a competitive edge.
Yeah.
So that's the point. You come to us to give you a competitive edge. You come to us because you've got a difficult problem that nobody else can solve. I actually tell people who want to come to it, could you please go and speak to all these other firms? And then if you still need us, then give us a call. And it's quite deliberate because it's really important they do see what's out there. And when they speak to us, say, God, you covered so much more in 1 hour that I've had to speak 3 months to different lawyers and accountants. They go, yeah, you are different. And that's because I'm in the media. Yeah. We do get lots of feedback from across Australia, from all different walks of life. Plus we've got clients live. We're able to capture and leverage that information in real time and push it to the market and democratise that information through technology.
Talking of media, you have really managed to carve yourself as an authority in the industry. Anything to do with media and the healthcare industry, you managed to be a voice. Is that something you deliberately architected, or is it something that you found yourself going? How do you get to a point in time whereby you're able to get that much attention, so much so that if someone is talking about the healthcare industry, most likely they're going to associate that with you?
Okay, it is weird. I'm going to admit, there was no grand plan to be in the media. Yeah. Frankly, I didn't like public speaking. I hated it. Yeah. And how did it happen? More by accident. Yeah. Everything I say sounds like an accident. It's true. But the media thing really started when I went to America to do my research back in '92 after my car accident, and I saw what was happening in healthcare, and I started, and that's why I wanted to be in healthcare. I wanted to see we want the best healthcare for all Australians in Australia. Everybody says go to America, it's the best place, and I came back and I was horrified. And what happened is I wrote my first article called Managed Care by Stealth and Greedy Corporates and the whole stuff, and it blew up. And in fact, there was only 14 people at my original presentation, but they happened to be all the presidents from all the medical colleges around Australia. I didn't realise it. I was just making this statement, and it's not quantity, it was quality. I had the biggest thought leaders in the room. Yeah. And here I'm this kid, and I think I was only about 28 when I did, and I wrote the paper. Yeah. And the journalist picked it up and said, man, this is groundbreaking, Managed Care by Stealth. And, the $1 billion corporate industry and what's happening here in Australia. And I pretty much lifted the lid on it. So once I did that, it got a lot of ratings. And I guess for a lot of the media companies, I rate for them. People read their newspapers. So I'm like cash to the media companies with my content. Yeah. And the content is unique. Yeah. And it's not because I'm trying to produce unique content. Yeah. It falls on my lap. Yeah. Once you're in the media, people then send you all their stories, all their problems. Yeah. And then I go, okay, maybe there's an angle, maybe we can fix it. But we'll go and fix it. We'll go and talk to the tax department if somebody's being hurt. I'll go and talk to the professional service reviewer for doctors being unfairly treated. Yeah. We ran a federal Senate inquiry against the Medicare watchdog. And I'm in the Hansards. I'll organise a petition to have a full, in-camera Senate inquiry to fix the problem. So it's not necessarily me looking for trouble. I see the trouble. People ask me to help. I don't charge for it. If I really believe in their cause, I'll go for it if I think it has a systemic effect on all of us and it affects patient care. Yeah. So I guess that's probably why I attract the media. And because I don't take sponsorship money, and that's why you won't see me driving a Rolls Royce and all those fancy things that I probably could if I decide to look the other way. I just try and take a very, what's called, centred view. I don't take a political view, whether it's Labor or Liberal, and healthcare is very, very political. I take a pragmatic view and stay centred. And I guess that's what's probably attracting all the attention. But I research. I go and read the Act. I don't just wait for a lawyer. Yeah. And then I really research it before I'm publishing or saying anything, and that's probably what the media likes and respects, and that's probably why they come to me, because I can actually back up what I'm saying when a lot of people don't walk the talk.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, because if you combine the fact that you're very vertically integrated, so you've been in the same industry for a long time, a lot of benchmarking, so obviously knowing your stuff and then doing your research, you combine that, and obviously the media is going to always appreciate that. Has that been a big boost to business from a marketing? Has it been a good marketing tool for yourself, or is it? I'm not trying to say that you're doing that for marketing, but has it had any other? What I'm trying to say is sometimes you do something for a very clear mission and purpose, but then you get the flow-on effects. Has it had any sort of benefit to the business?
It could be good and bad.
It could be good and bad. Okay. Yeah.
Somebody called me David Dahm.
I think I read that article.
I read that article there. Yeah, there was an article, David Dahm, when he talks about tax issues and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that people think I'm just sitting there trying to do things just to get business for the sake of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me be really clear. I can't work for 110,000 doctors in Australia.
Absolutely.
Okay, and nor do I want to.
Yeah.
I'll be lucky if I do less than 1%.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm happy with that, because I want to do ethical work. I want to do work where I still have a normal life. I don't want to have a crazy life. I guess people sadly see, this is all about making money. But no, I'm actually trying to raise contemporary issues that will affect the sustainability of your practice. Yeah. And I'm trying to tip you off to do something. Yes. And so you basically have a group of people that really like you. Yeah. I'm sounding like Tay-Tay, isn't it? Yeah. And then people who don't like you. Yep. Because... And I think the people who don't like you probably don't like you, and the ones actually, most people who don't like me have never spoken to me, to be honest. And the ones that have spoken to me are actually, they're the ones that are going, they genuinely want to understand. And I don't get caught up with the negative people. What I can say is, hey, my phone's always there. It's a free 1-800 number. Give me a call. I'm happy to have a free chat, no obligation, if you want to hear a different point of view. And I think the point is that media has been good. Yeah. I guess they say if you're not in the media, or if they're not talking about you, you're not doing well. Yeah. I do enjoy a lot of what's called natural interest to a point. Yeah. And it does create a professional business profile. Yeah. Is it immediate? No, you can't really tell. Yeah. I mean, marketing is so stupid. It's not like you can't do one article and the phone rings. It doesn't. Yeah. This is something you do it over 5, 10, 15 years. You can't just do one-off. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. But what I really find, it's really the content is what people relate to. And they might not always agree because they don't always understand. Yeah. And to me, that's where it works. But where it really generated a lot of business, to be quite honest, is that one of our clients made the BRW Fastest 100 a few years back, and it was all over the newspapers. And then as soon as they said it was because of health and life, suddenly we got all this work around Australia, and we had to build bigger offices and all that we're in at the moment, because they said, look, I want you to do for us what you did to them. Yeah. And I think that's probably where the media is very, very powerful. Yeah. When one of your clients wins big awards, and we've had many clients win many awards, and that's probably the most powerful way to get more business is when your clients do well. Yeah. So we always want to see our clients do well, not because of, but that is one of the benefits, I guess. Yeah. And I think, this is where, your clients, your testimonials, people will stand by you when you've done the hard yards. Yeah. And I'm very grateful to those people, but that's really where I think the media becomes really, really important. Yeah.
I want to talk a bit more about operations, because that's something that we've had different conversations about, and something that I always admire what you've done. As your business grows, what are some of the bottlenecks or challenges you face, and how have you been able to sort of streamline those processes?
Yeah, look, I work in the world called tax and accounting, and in the commercial world, and at least in tax, I mean, there's 10,000 pages in the Tax Act, and it changes like every month, and it's like standing on quicksand, and we're supposed to know it right to the last letter. Yeah. So that's really hard to keep up and give the advice, let alone know that something's changed and process it. So really the key thing is systems, which a lot of people pay lip service to it, but the biggest problem is what systems do you use? And thank God technology's changed. Certainly in the last 10, 15 years, it's made a lot easier. So you have things like Basecamp or Rike or Asana, or all these programs have been really useful for basically, capturing all this information, having all these tasks, being able to assign people to tasks or to a project with subtasks, And that's one of the key tools that we use. We use a program called Rike to do the scaling. So therefore it allows to democratize the information and particularly when you need, absolute granular detail on a particular matter. And then with things like Google Chat, which has been fantastic. Okay. So, you can just sit there and you message people, including your clients. You can go into a video conference. It can record it. It can keep the whole transcript. It can even summarize the meetings, a program called Tactic. So you move really fast and you can do summaries, instant summaries to people on what you've discussed. And so this is where, technology has been fantastic. Yeah. And then the third element is automation in all of that. Yeah. Now it's just getting, you can get programs now where you can just automate a lot of these tasks. So we spend a lot of time writing manuals. People say, well, that's a waste of time. Well, if you're trying to capture and leverage and you're growing, you haven't got time to keep training every new staff member what to do. But now with manuals, with videos, people can learn in real time at a certain level, not be too overwhelmed, and that's been very useful. Okay. But now you've got, if you've been very careful at doing your manuals and your processes, it's now becoming a lot easier now to. And we talked about it a bit earlier about going agentic, which is where you can use AI to start trawling through that information and actually helping your staff and your clients. Because the more you can put your IP pen to paper, for the want of a better word, or in this case in the cloud, where it can actually go through all that information and data, it's a lot quicker, it can process and then produce information at a much more cost-effective, high-value, high-quality way. So to me, the key is systems, automation, delegation in order to scale, and actually having what's called a central source of truth, and making sure that the ecosystem of your communication systems all have one centralized talk point. In this case, we use Google Chat, and that radiates to various specialty programs that we use. And even when it comes to coming to work in the morning, all the staff have to sign into the town hall, good morning and good night, so we know they're there because we've got people working off-site as well. So it's a great way to maintain a virtual community, including with your clients, where everybody feels in real time you're always available, even though you're not physically, but people feel safe knowing that you're there.
So with technology and team, I wanted to talk about the team a little bit. What's been your strategy to attracting the top talent and making sure that they're able to get in there and start producing as soon as possible?
Honestly, we get a lot of applications. Okay, so we don't have a problem with people applying to us. In fact, only this year we went and applied. So we won 10 accountants from India, and we got like 3,000 applications in under 3 weeks, and it broke our system. Wow. So it's not a problem as application. What we're looking for is quality, not quantity. And this is the key bit. What we've worked out is that a lot of people do want to work for us. It's an exciting environment. It is. We are living in a very exciting environment. I think it feels like Suits. There's always some drama on, there's some litigation going on, somebody's getting divorced or somebody's trying to rip somebody off. We tend to do a lot of the tough jobs, or we're taking on the tax office. It's a lot of fun. I can tell you, this is not it's not a boring place like maybe some other accountants. So we do get hires from all across all the universities. But what we actually do is we have a slide deck which has got 128 pages with a trick question at the bottom. It's a very simple one. And people go, why would you read a 128-page slide deck to apply for a job? And it says, because we're testing for 3 things: attitude, ability, and availability. There's too many people who apply for jobs like Tinder and they swipe left and right. So this actually self-filters them out. So out of the 3,000 we got, we only had about 10 that applied properly from India. And the same here. And that's how we select people. Because if we've got the time and the patience to read the slide deck, which is actually a flexibility, freedom, culture slide deck, that's telling them, this is who we are, this is what we're looking for. And if you've got the patience to read it, it means you care about us, you're learning about us, we're learning about you, and you're learning about yourself. And right at the bottom says, say that you're excited and put that in your covering letter. And if I say that in your covering letter, it's what it only takes me it takes me 6 seconds to grant an interview. So we guarantee an interview if you've gone through that process, because we were hiring people with the right attitude. It's not the qualifications. We can do all that other stuff. But if you don't have a person with the right attitude, the right fit, who's hungry, who's curious, who's humble, who doesn't feel, they need to be CEO tomorrow. You've got somebody you can work with. It's somebody you can build and grow. And that's basically the first step is I do those hires personally.
Yeah.
I don't let any staff member.
Okay.
And you only have one interview, and it's with me.
Okay.
If you get through that process, because basically everybody, 99% of people will not go through that process.
Okay.
And we're happy. We don't apologise. And some people say, oh, but David, you know, sometimes I'm walking down the town and they go, well, you never responded to my email. I said, well, I did. If you read the application, it said that, you know, if you'd gone and read the slide deck, you would have got a job with us. And, or at least an interview. And I said, you don't have attention to detail, and that's what we're testing for. I'm going to read 10,000 pages of the Tax Act and keep up. If you can't even read this slide deck, you won't have the patience or the persistence or the attention to detail that we need to execute fast. So I'm happy to give that feedback to people. And sometimes when people ring up and complain, I say, well, I explain it to them, they go, yeah, you're right. Anyway, well, remember next time. And hopefully you've learned from that experience. So, we're very clear about who we're looking for. And I'd rather not hire people or not take on a new business unless we get those people.
It makes total sense. As you've grown your business, how has your role evolved as a leader? As you've gone through, had more staff, had more responsibilities, had more zeros in terms of your expenditures, how has your role evolved as a leader in the process?
Well, when you're starting up and you're a startup and you're a solo person, a solopreneur, I guess you call it, you're not a leader because nobody's following you.
But people these days start their business and get a Facebook page and call themselves CEO.
I think you're a leader, and that's fine. And I guess you've got to be aspirational. I respect that. You've got to think big for these things to happen, yes? But you really become a leader by the first staff member you hire. You know, they're watching what you're saying. They're seeing what time you clock off. They're watching how you speak. And that's when the real leadership starts. It's from your first hire, right? And then what you got to ask yourself is, and this is really the second and third one that gets really more interesting, because then when it's just two of you, you know, your best of mates, you know, but when you get in 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 18, you get all these personalities that come in. And potentially what happens is you get so big, everybody starts forming their own little cabals, and it gets very hard to manage and complicated, and people are losing their vision, and people are really coming to have a good time rather than to maybe do work. You know, particularly if you're trying to be that great boss, where you're saying, look, I want you to be disciplined but loosely aligned, and people say, I'll be a great boss, and you know, don't worry about this and don't worry about that. And what happens is you get a bit confused. You're saying, is this about leadership or likership? And I've had that problem because I think I'm a nice guy and I want to be nice to my staff, but you can't. And you then suddenly have to go, no, hang on, you didn't come to work on time, and you got to start calling people out and saying, well, that's not what we do here. And I think that's where the real leadership starts to kick in, because the only reason why you're doing it is because you're burning a big hole in your bottom line. You're going to go broke unless you bring it together. So I guess the issue is I did become a trustee of the Governance Leadership Foundation. So I was selected back in 2000 to be that, and that's where I learned about leadership and leading from behind and not from front, and being more of a servant to the staff and saying, here, I'm here to help you, not the other way around, not you work for me. So I work for my staff at the end of the day, because they're the ones that make me look good, right? So to me, my idea of leadership is one of servitude, right? It's not a title or a position. I just do that because people at least want to know that's where the buck stops. So my focus is always about trying to find the strengths and less of the weaknesses of individuals, look at it as a collective group and build on their strengths as a collective. And staff call what they want to do at Health and Life. They've never asked for a pay rise. They don't have to. I said, if you have to ask for a pay rise, you might want to think about working elsewhere. It's probably a hint. They have to be happy. And if you're not smiling, don't come to Health and Life, is what I say, because you've got to find your own happiness. It's not a life sentence anywhere you work. So it's really about, even though they're getting paid, I see it as volunteerism. You need to volunteer your heart and your mind to this work and be part of that team. And if you don't want to and don't share a similar vision to what we have, then it won't work out for you. And I want you to all be individual leaders, whether it's one small task, even getting the coffee, be a leader getting the coffee, not just sitting there and telling the Prime Minister what's right from wrong. Leadership starts with the little things. It's not just the big things. And I value the little things equally as important, getting the photocopying or the coffee, as a leadership moment. And to me, every day there's always a leadership moment, and what we try and do is promote those people who who help others. We have a team player of the year, and then what does that mean? Or the month, it's about saying you worked outside your job description to help somebody to get them over the line. It's like soldiers getting people over the line. So I think that's what we try and encourage. And so then you can self-replicate a culture, and a positive and a focused culture, and not a negative culture. So when things get tough, the crew can absorb the shock of something going wrong. I don't know, it's a loss of a client or something went badly wrong. Because people go, I know why we're here. I trust my team. I trust the people behind me and in front of me. I feel safe. And that's really what we're trying to do, a safe learning environment. And as we say, the more you learn, the more you earn. And some people do tap out. It's normal. I've done enough time here. I want to do something different, and that's normal, and I respect that. But then don't hold back somebody else's career progression because you want to move on. I'd rather you find another job, and that's why I have no problem with people leaving. I think it's probably a good thing because you're always getting fresh, enthusiastic blood, and that's what keeps it going, because nobody wants to come to work with people who don't want to be there. It's that simple.
Absolutely. As you've grown a business, how do you decide what aspects of the business to focus on when you're growing a business? Do you have some sort of a framework, to decide I should focus on this is the right timing or not the wrong timing? How do you go about deciding what to prioritize on, what growth initiatives versus not to focus on?
Look, in running any business, it's called risk and return.
Yeah.
And all I focus on is my clients' risk and return.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they pay us. Right? Now, they might always appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, it could be a tax man, and they don't appreciate it. And they're saying, well, I'm making enough, David. I don't have to do all this. And I said, yeah, but if the tax man knocks, it's a problem. Timing is really important. Until one of their mates gets audited, nobody seems to worry about it. It's not in my back garden. Now, I will focus on that because I know that problem's not going to go away. It's not a question of if, it's when. So what I focus on, if that has a big systemic issue, how are we going to look? And I'll spend time on it, even though nobody else in the marketplace, all my colleagues are saying David's being ridiculous. I will focus on it because I know it's a ticking time bomb. First thing. Second thing is, I then focus on what does the client need to know in terms of them making bank. Well, they need a better set of financials, they need budgets, benchmarks, or hey, there's a better pathology deal or leads going. And I make sure we communicate that to them in advance, saying, look, there's some real opportunities. So basically the whole idea is the client's the one that pays you, and I want them to be happy paying us. I don't like them begrudgingly like a dentist paying their fees. Yeah. Right? I don't want to be one of those guys. I've said to one or two clients, you're wasting your money on us. Yeah. You should spend it on somewhere else where you do care about the advice you get, and it's okay. So I'm not afraid to let go of clients. I'm not afraid to let go of money because if it's not the right fit, I don't want a bad name that somebody says, oh, he overcharges and he doesn't provide value. So that's the key. It's not what I think provides value, it's what they think provides value, and what they're prepared to pay for is what I spend our priorities on. It's about them, it's not about us. And that's basically where I go with that risk-return matrix in there, in place. So I look at the strategic opportunity first, the vision, the strategic opportunity, and seeing it's in alignment with that. Then I look at the operational risk and opportunity, and then that's the third element, that's the filter that we go through. And then we say this will have a higher priority because this has a bigger significant impact, so new Fair Work laws or whatever. They might not appreciate it now, but in 6 months we know they're all going to get letters. I'll give you an example here in South Australia, payroll tax with doctors.
Yes.
60% who applied for exemption, 100% of the 60% of practices here in South Australia applied for exemption, basically admitted that they weren't tax compliant for years, for a decade. Now they've got the best law, accounting, legal resources, accounting resources. These are all practices, all shapes and sizes, and 60%, 100% of them got it wrong. That's 60%. And it has, when every doctor might be $500,000 in back taxes per full-time equivalent doctor, that's a multi-million-dollar problem. And I've been talking about it for 10 years. So only now are they looking at the issue, and everybody else was wiping under the carpet or nobody's saying it's anything. And this is a sad thing in this country, that we, as much as we have laws, people just do what they can get away with. And then when something goes wrong, and for those that don't want to listen to the law and a floating law, I think, you're going to have to cop it sweet. Yeah. But the thing I hate is, why are you passing that bill on to the patient? Because you didn't get your tax structures right, and you were trying to save a penny and you're losing £1 now. That morally and ethically doesn't sit right with me, and that's probably where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if we have a mature understanding about who we are, why we do what we do, to be compliant, to you know, obey our laws and to do what's right by society, and you know, sometimes it's the cost of doing business to do things properly. I think we'd be living in a much better and happier world where we're not mean and harmful to each other. And I guess that's where that's the philosophy behind why we do what we do and what sort of things we do produce. Oh, look, there's a lot of things I could produce to make fast money, but I won't do it for ethical reasons. Yeah. I refuse to do it. Yeah. And that's probably where I draw that line. It's not just about making money.
Absolutely. As we start to wind down, how do you structure your time differently now compared to how you did when things were a lot more small and simple?
Well, that's easy. It's called using a Google Calendar. Priorities, traffic light report, green, orange, red. Yeah. Push back 3 times. Okay, probably not that important. Get rid of it or delegate it. Yeah. It's really simple. And every morning I get up, I don't worry about anything. I get up in the morning and look at that calendar. Yeah. Everybody else has to report their calendars the way that they get their work done in the 9 to 5. They actually say this is going to take me 2 hours or 3 hours. It's a very structured system. So we have work-life balance and we're not stressing. And I think a lot of people don't like doing that, by the way. Yeah. It's probably one of the hardest things to do in terms of discipline. Yeah. But what it does, it makes you accountable to yourself. You can see your results and you actually get a big rush when you go, right, I got through these things during the day. We've been able to advance these issues, and it keeps everyone on the same page. So you can tag people into it. So to me, it's really simple. That's what I do more now. Yeah. Because you've got so many different people and moving parts using project tools that sort of back into it. So it makes it really easy to drill down to those calendar tasks and execute what you've got to do for that day. So I don't stress about stuff. Yeah. Like people worry about this. Did I do this? Forget it. I've got the worst memory. Yeah. It's on my phone, and I live and die by it. Yeah. And I encourage people to do it. And actually, I had this mother actually wasn't single, working for me, and she said, "You know, David, I hated your calendar system, and I really want to resign. But once I did it in my not only my work life, but also my personal life, it's changed my life. I'm getting so much more done." And that's called focus. Yes. And what the good thing about a calendar is it gives you that sense of focus, purpose, and completion. And I think it does something to your dopamine or something there. It triggers it off, and it actually has a really good feeling because people want to feel in control. So that's how I stay in control. When people are out of control, I say that's where we go to. Whenever there's a crisis, go back to your calendar and let's just map it out. What can you do? Step it out. Work out the priorities. Work out whether you need to bring somebody in or not, and away you go. So every morning, everybody has to go through their calendars for about 10 minutes, and then we move forward.
What's next in your business growth journey? What excites you about the future?
AI? Yeah. Even though we're not supposed to. But so what actually happened, I went to India, came back. One of the biggest problems I found was that I got sick, and not all my medical records were with me at the time. Even though I asked the doctor to send it, it didn't quite come in time. So I'm not having a go at the doctor. It's okay, but that's the reality. Yeah. And the worst thing is I'm terrible at remembering whatever medical problems I have. Not that I have a lot, but I had I was on some blood thinners at the time. Yeah. And they needed that information. In the emergency hospital when I was flying back, I had too much pollution in my lungs at the time. I was in Mumbai Hospital. And what I realised, and there was a light bulb moment here, is that, wow, if we get sick or ill, who's got our medical records? Who's hanging on to all this information? It's not the doctors. They might only have a little piece of that information. Who's keeping all of it? It's a bit like going to the accountant and you've only got one invoice. You've got to give them all the invoices for the year for them to give them an analysis of how much money you made or didn't make. So we came up with a project called FamilyConnect. Okay. And basically it's tracing a family tree, because when I went to India, I couldn't remember all my family members. It was 40 years later. So I was a bit embarrassed. So this was by accident again. And then I just realised, wow, this is great. And actually I did find that certain family members had a certain, whether it was, a history of cancer or otherwise. I thought, this is great. I actually learnt more about my family, my health condition, also who was successful, who went to Harvard or who went to Cambridge University. So even the young ones, my nephews and nieces, said, I didn't know we had people like that. I said, can you put me in touch? And I thought, okay, let's create this thing called FamilyConnect. So we've been working on a software program called FamilyConnect.ai. Yeah, awesome. And that's basically helping people stay, I guess it's Facebook, but it's a private version. Yeah. And basically keeping everybody connected with each other and also helping them with medical records and making appointments and doing summaries. So when you go and see a doctor, the doctor can actually have cite a reference to all your medical records, so then when you see a doctor, you don't have to keep remembering your grandmother's pills or even your own, and so you can have a high quality consult. So we're actually down a fair bit in that project, so we have dev teams doing that at the moment. So and we want that to go global. So we've got people working all around the world, because it seems to be a problem elsewhere around the world. So that's pretty exciting, and that's what our next step is. And it's, I hate saying that word Uber, but it's like an Uber app, and it'll profile your health condition so it can match you with doctors who actually do specialise in those areas. So if you do have a mental health problem and you've got suicidal ideation, you don't turn up to a general psychiatrist that says 6 months later, because that's the wait list, I don't do 24-hour suicide watch. I think that's terrible for patients, and that's terrible for providers, where at the end of the day, something like a little bit of extra information to help people screen and make timely appointments, because it's sometimes hard to get across town and take time off work, that this tool is going to basically bridge what's called that expectation, that knowledge and skills gap. And so we're working pretty hard on actually closing that gap.
That's exciting. Knowing now what you know, 30 years down the line, more than 30 years down the line of running this business, what advice would you give businesses that are sort of starting to thinking of growing? Not necessarily starting, but people that are, they've started a business, but they're now thinking, we need to start to scale, we need to grow this thing. What sort of advice would you give them?
Networks. Get in touch with mentors who've had skin in the game.
Yes.
Right, who've actually made mistakes, and they can actually tell you, not somebody who's going to cite you some Harvard reference.
Yes.
All right, this is not an academic exercise. This is about your life and your livelihood. It could end up in a divorce, something worse.
Yes.
So I think it's really, really important to really find like-minded people who are authentic and are not just telling you their big game. And when you really look, I think we talked about it, underneath there was a lot more form than substance. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. If there's anything that I can recommend is mentors, and I had a lot of good ones which were not formally mentors, and these were, and I shout out to Dr. Peter Hyson. He was of the famous Hyson tunnels. He was the grandson of the Hyson paintings. Peter's the one that actually taught me about vision, because that was one of my first clinics down at Morpheville Medical Centre down when you go in Anzac Highway. And Peter talked about his father going off to France and learning about paintings, and he became an international and world-renowned painter. And he talked about the vision and doing something for the greater good. And that was really impressionable to this day. I remember it, and I'm really grateful to him. And we did a lot of great things together. And, he says, David, you need to have a vision for the future, and then you need to be clearly articulating it and living it and breathing it. And I think when you meet people like that, they're, what I call founders. Right, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude to people who are not founders of a business, but to me, every founder who I've ever met, whether you've got an MBA or not, you've got one from me. It's called the MBA of life.
Yes.
When you put your money, where your mouth is, you have my respect, instant respect, because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yes.
It's very easy to have people criticising from the keyboard or from the armchair, but when I see somebody who's what you call grinding, you have my time and you have my attention, and how a mentor helps you reflect and contextualise right from wrong and what to do next. And they have great networks, and they can introduce you to other people, so you're not reinventing the wheel. The other thing is I'll be probably using YouTube a lot more, because the content's pretty good.
Yes.
Make sure you have really good research skills in terms of prompting, but fact checking on Perplexity, so fact check me, and if you look at it, you can actually find people who do have the substance.
Yes.
It's not like it was back in my day where I didn't have internet in my day. Now, before I meet you, I know everything about you by going to Perplexity, and if I'm going to come here, I'm going to know everything about you before I come, and you will save a lot of time, save a lot of money, and know that you're talking to the right people. So it's so much easier to get ahead today as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, because the technology is at your fingertips. The only thing that's holding you back is imagination and a bit of courage, and being able to just meet and talk with people, so you can get to a bit more of the granular stuff. But there is no reason why you can't be successful locally or globally today, any more here in Adelaide than you are in San Francisco or anywhere else. I think it's a level playing field.
It is. I agree. Thank you so much for your time, David. I really appreciate your insight. I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy the lessons you've learned. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for tuning in.
It's a pleasure.